The terms breathing system, respiratory system, and gas exchange system all refer to the organ system responsible for inhaling oxygen-rich air and exhaling carbon dioxide-rich air. While these terms are often used interchangeably, it's important to note that breathing, respiration, and gaseous exchange refer to three distinct but complementary processes within the respiratory system. Breathing is the process of taking oxygen-rich air from the atmosphere into the lungs and expelling carbon dioxide-rich air from the lungs into the atmosphere. Respiration is a biochemical process whereby cells break down glucose to release energy. There are two types: aerobic respiration, which uses oxygen, and anaerobic respiration, which does not use oxygen. Carbon dioxide is formed as a byproduct of respiration. Gaseous exchange is the process whereby oxygen and carbon dioxide diffuse across a membrane in opposite directions. This happens in the alveoli of the lungs. There is a high concentration of oxygen in the alveolus and a low concentration in the blood capillary. Also, there is a high concentration of carbon dioxide in the blood capillary and a low concentration in the alveolus. So oxygen moves into the blood capillary and carbon dioxide moves into the alveolus by diffusion. Now, let's look at the parts of the breathing system. Starting from the top, we have the nose and nasal cavity, where air enters and is filtered, warmed, and humidified. Pharynx, a pathway for the movement of air from the nose to the larynx. Larynx, also known as the voice box, it's involved in breathing, sound production, and preventing food from entering the trachea. The epiglottis is a small flap of tissue that acts as a switch between the trachea and the esophagus. Its function is crucial. It closes over the trachea during swallowing to prevent food and liquid from entering the lungs. The trachea is the windpipe. It filters the air we inhale and branches into the bronchi. The bronchi and bronchioles are air passages which direct air into the lungs. Rings of cartilage stop the trachea and bronchi from collapsing during breathing. The insides of the trachea, bronchi, and bronchioles are lined with epithelium that consist of ciliated cells which secrete mucus. Dust particles and bacteria are trapped in the sticky mucus film. The lungs are the main organs of the respiratory system. They have a spongy texture and can be expanded and compressed by movements of the chest when air is inhaled or exhaled. Alveoli are tiny air sacs where gaseous exchange occurs. The ribcage is a bony structure which surrounds and protects the lungs and heart. Between the ribs are muscles called intercostal muscles. They assist in breathing by contracting and relaxing, causing the ribcage to move outward or inward. Between the ribs and lungs we find the pleural membrane. This double-layered membrane produces pleural fluid, which lubricates the lungs and allows them to move smoothly during breathing. The diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle located at the base of the lungs. It contracts and flattens during inhalation, increasing the volume of the chest cavity and allowing air to be drawn into the lungs. Let's follow the journey of air, starting with the moment you inhale. When you take a breath, air enters through the nose or mouth, where it's filtered, warmed, and humidified. It then passes through the pharynx and larynx down the trachea and into the bronchi. The bronchi split into smaller bronchioles and finally reach the alveoli. Here, oxygen from the air passes through the thin walls of the alveoli and into the surrounding capillaries, where it enters the bloodstream. At the same time, carbon dioxide passes from the capillaries to the alveoli. From there, it moves up through the bronchioles, bronchi, and trachea, and is finally expelled through the nose or mouth. Notice that the air you breathe in is rich in oxygen, while the air you exhale is rich in carbon dioxide. This difference occurs because the oxygen that enters your lungs diffuses from the alveoli into the blood capillaries, where it is then transported to body tissues for respiration. Respiration is the process by which glucose and oxygen are broken down to release energy. During this process, carbon dioxide is produced as a waste product. The carbon dioxide is carried back to the lungs by the blood and diffuses from the capillaries into the alveoli, where it is expelled from the body during exhalation. This exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the alveoli and blood capillaries is known as gaseous exchange. Now, let's explore how the alveoli are uniquely adapted for this critical function. Millions of alveoli provide a large surface area for gaseous exchange. The walls are just 1 cell thick, allowing gases to diffuse easily. Moist lining keeps the alveoli from drying out and helps dissolve gases. Alveoli are surrounded by capillaries. So blood continually transports oxygen from the alveoli and carbon dioxide to the alveoli, maintaining a concentration gradient, resulting in rapid diffusion of the two gases. Breathing continuously brings oxygen-rich air into the lungs and expels carbon dioxide air from the lungs, also maintaining a concentration gradient and resulting in diffusion of the two gases. Let's explore what really happens as we breathe in and out. Have you noticed how your chest rises and expands when you inhale, and then falls and contracts when you exhale? Here's the reason behind it. During inhalation, as you breathe in, your diaphragm contracts and moves downward. At the same time, the intercostal muscles between your ribs contract, lifting your ribcage up and outward. This coordinated action increases the volume of your chest cavity, reducing the pressure inside, which causes air to flow into your lungs. During exhalation, when you exhale, the diaphragm relaxes and moves upward, and the intercostal muscles also relax, allowing the ribcage to lower and the chest cavity to shrink. This reduction in volume increases the pressure inside the chest, forcing air out of your lungs. Now, let's compare the composition of inspired or inhaled and expired or exhaled air. Inhaled air is composed of about 21% oxygen, 0.04% carbon dioxide, and 79% nitrogen. And exhaled air is composed of about 16% oxygen, 4% carbon dioxide, and 79% nitrogen. The decrease in oxygen in expired air is because oxygen is absorbed in blood and used in respiration. And the increase in carbon dioxide in expired air is because carbon dioxide is produced during respiration. There is no change in percentage composition of nitrogen in inspired or expired air. The temperature of expired air is warmer because the body heats up the air to body temperature, and expired air is more moist because water vapor is also a waste product of respiration. Physical activity impacts our breathing systems significantly. An adult at rest usually takes between 12 to 18 breaths per minute. However, during increased physical activity, there is an increase in the rate of breathing. This is because muscle cells need more energy to work during physical activity. This causes an increase in the rate of respiration. Therefore, more oxygen is required and more carbon dioxide is produced. This results in an increase in the rate and depth of breathing, speeding up the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Lastly, let's discuss the harmful effects of smoking on the breathing system. Hot smoke damages the walls of the alveoli, reducing their surface area and ability to exchange gases efficiently. This means less oxygen gets into your blood, and you may feel short of breath. Tobacco smoke contains up to 4,000 harmful chemicals, including carbon monoxide, nicotine, and tar, which can lead to several lung disorders and diseases. Carbon monoxide binds with hemoglobin in red blood cells, forming carboxyhemoglobin. This reduces the blood's capacity to transport oxygen, which is why smokers often experience shortness of breath. Nicotine is a highly addictive substance, making quitting smoking extremely difficult. It also causes the narrowing of airways, restricting airflow, and contributing to breathing difficulties. Tar is a sticky substance which accumulates in the lungs, leading to inflammation and narrowing of the airways by stimulating excess mucus production. Tar is also carcinogenic and is a major cause of lung cancer in smokers. Now, let's discuss some lung diseases caused by smoking, which include bronchitis, asthma, and emphysema. Smoking is a common cause of chronic bronchitis, which is when the airways in your lungs become inflamed and produce too much mucus. This leads to a persistent cough and trouble breathing. Over time, chronic bronchitis can permanently damage your lungs. Smoking can trigger asthma, a condition where the airways become inflamed and narrow, causing wheezing, shortness of breath, and chest tightness. For people with asthma, smoking or being around smoke can make symptoms much worse and harder to control. It can also cause emphysema, a disease where the alveoli are destroyed, creating large empty spaces in the lungs. This makes it hard to get enough oxygen, leading to constant shortness of breath. Emphysema cannot be cured because the damage to the lungs is permanent. That's it for today's dive into the breathing system. Understanding how our breathing works can help us appreciate the importance of taking care of our lungs. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more science content. See you in our next lesson.